viewer, welcome to the Mental Health Program brought to you by Hope Channel Kenya and myself, Florida Afifu. I am a clinical psychologist and a relationships coach, and I am glad to bring you these programs that raise awareness on issues of mental health for awareness creation and also for promotion of mental wellness. Today in our program, we are going to talk about substance-related and addictive disorders. We are going to focus a little bit more towards the end on alcohol disorders, alcohol-related disorders. Substance-related disorders have a lot to do with drugs. Drugs are an integral part of our everyday life for many people, whether the drugs are used for legitimate purposes, such as treatment of various ailments, or whether the drugs are being used for recreational purposes. Substance-related disorders are disorders that arise when the drugs that directly activate the brain reward system are taken for feelings of the pleasure that they induce. The pleasurable sensations vary with the drugs that are used. The brain reward system is a brain circuit that causes feelings of pleasure when it is turned on. And to turn it on, we probably need to engage in something that we enjoy, like eating foods that we like, spending time with friends, the feeling of being in love, or any other activity or feeling that makes us feel happy. Whenever this reward circuit is activated, our brains know that something important is happening that is worth remembering and worth repeating. Drugs under substance-related disorders are divided in 10 classes depending on the effect on the body. Top of the list, we have alcohol, which is very common in our society. Then we have anti-anxiety and sedative drugs. These are drugs that are used to treat anxiety and other illnesses that have a relationship with sleep disturbances and things like that. Then we have caffeine. Then we have cannabis, that includes marijuana and other synthetic cannabinoids. We have hallucinogens. We have inhalants such as paint and certain glues, which is very common with the people living in the streets. We have opioids such as morphine. Then we have stimulants, tobacco, and other drugs, including anabolic steroids and other commonly abused substances. Substance-related disorders are typically divided into two. First, we have substance-induced disorders. Substance-induced disorders are disorders caused by direct effect of the drug upon its consumption or upon it being used. Under substance-induced disorders, we have intoxication, withdrawal, and substance-induced mental disorders. Intoxication refers to the development of reversible substance-specific symptoms which manifest mentally or by behavior, and this may involve altered perception, where one misconceives reality, euphoria. Euphoria is marked with feelings of extreme excitement and happiness that is not circumstantial. Another symptom of intoxication could be cognitive impairment, where one has trouble or problems with remembering, learning, concentration, and decision making. Impaired judgment is also another symptom of intoxication when it comes to substance-induced disorders. And this is where somebody is not able to make good decisions. There is impaired physical functioning, which is very common with those who abuse alcohol. And we can always see them stagger or have poor use of their motor skills. Then there is social functioning that is affected by substance-induced disorder upon intoxication, where one loses inhibition and sometimes become abusive. And inhibition is where one loses the ability to decide whether an action or a speech or a manner of conduct is appropriate for the situation that they are in. More often than not, we have seen people who are intoxicated lose inhibition, and at times we see them stripping naked or going for long or short calls in the light of the public. Also, we have mood lability as a symptom of intoxication. mood lability is marked by uncontrollable crying or uncontrollable laughter, which is inconsistent with the circumstances of that individual. And finally, we have aggressive behavior that also occurs as a symptom when somebody suffers intoxication, one of the substance-induced disorders. Taken to the extreme, intoxication can lead to an overdose, significant morbidity, and the risk of death. More often than not, we have heard of people who die because they overdosed on a particular substance of abuse. Withdrawal, which is a second type of substance-induced disorder, refers to the substance-specific psychological effects, symptoms, and behavior changes that occur or are caused by stopping or reducing the intake of a particular substance. Withdrawal causes significant distress and impaired functioning. Withdrawal is the second type of substance-induced disorders. Withdrawal refers to the substance-specific physiological effects, symptoms, and behavior changes that are caused when an individual stops or reduces intake of a particular substance of use. Withdrawal causes significant distress and impaired functioning. Symptoms of withdrawal differ depending on the substance used, and they include autonomic hyperactivity. Autonomic hyperactivity is presented with sweating and high pulse rate. We also have increased hand tremors, insomnia, nausea or vomiting, temporary hallucinations and illusions, psychomotor agitation or retardation, anxiety, generalized tonic-clonic seizures, headaches, marked fatigue or drowsiness, impaired cognitive functioning, flu-like symptoms such as nausea, stiffness, muscle stiffness or muscle pain, irritability, anger, aggressive behavior, decreased appetite, weight loss or weight gain, fever, and other symptoms depending on which substance is used by the individual suffering withdrawal. It is important to note at this point that most patients with withdrawal recognize that re-administering the substance will reduce their symptoms. So we find people who are suffering from withdrawal each and every time re-administering the substance of use so that they can alleviate the symptoms of withdrawal. And this is very common with people who are suffering addiction. Another important point to note is that withdrawal may be common with patients suffering substance use disorders. However, it is important to note that withdrawal may also develop following appropriate medical use of certain prescribed drugs, such as opioid stimulants and sedative drugs. The third type of substance-induced disorders are substance-induced mental disorders. These are mental disorders produced by use of substances or withdrawal of use of certain substances, and they resemble independent mental disorders such as depression, anxiety or psychosis, or other neurocognitive disorders. This happens when upon intoxication or upon withdrawal, an individual suffers significant mental disorders that whose symptoms resemble non-mental disorders. There is a specific criteria for diagnosis of substance-induced mental disorders. Proper diagnosis should be done by a mental health practitioner, and that is to say that even as we are getting more information and we are gaining more insight and understanding on substance-induced mental disorder, we should refrain from self-diagnosis. The other type of substance-related disorders is substance use disorders, or what we commonly refer to as addiction. Substance use disorders are types of substance-related disorders that involve a pathological pattern of behavior in which patients continue to use a certain substance despite experiencing significant problems related to its use. There may also be physiological manifestations which include changes in brain chemistry. A person suffering from substance use disorder or addiction, if we may say, may present with the following symptoms. The first significant symptom is impaired control over the use of that particular substance. In this case, the person takes the substance in large amounts or for a longer time than originally planned. They may have planned to go out just to drink with friends, but they end up drinking more than they had planned and spending more than they had intended to spend on that particularly substance that they are using. The second indication of impaired control over use is when the person desires to stop or cut down the use of the substance, but they are completely unable to. Thirdly, the person spends substantial time obtaining, using, or recovering from the effects of the substance that they use. And another show of impaired control is when the person has intense desire, a very intense craving to use that substance whenever they are not using. People suffering substance use disorders would also present some social impairments where the person fails to fill major role obligations, maybe at work, at school, or even in the home environment, where the person continues to use the substance even though it causes or worsens their social or interpersonal problems, where the person gives up or reduces important social, occupational, or recreative activities because of the use of the substance. The person may also present with risky behavior where they use the substance in physically hazardous situations, for example, drinking while driving or working when intoxicated. The person also may show risky behavior when they continue using the substance despite knowing full well that this substance they are using is worsening a non-medical condition or a non-psychological problem that they have been diagnosed with. Pharmacological symptoms that are relevant with people suffering substance use disorder include tolerance and withdrawal. Tolerance is where a person that uses a specific drug needs to progressively use high amounts of that drug to produce intoxication or the desired effects. Somebody who has used a particular drug over time, when tolerance sets in, that they may have the need to use more of the drug to achieve desired effects. Or when they use the same amount of the drug, the effect may come, but it lasts, its effect decreases over time. Withdrawal, as I've already explained, is when there are physical effects, psychological effects, behavioral effects that manifest when somebody stops the use of a particular substance. Research on mental health disorders in Kenya indicate that substance-related disorders are the third most commonly diagnosed disorders in Kenya after depression and anxiety. Among the different types of substances that are abused or are reported in Kenya, alcohol contributes to the largest burden of substance-related illnesses in Kenya, with youth aged 18 to 29 years mostly affected by alcohol-related disorders. Alcohol abuse is a major social, health, economic, and moral problem in Kenya. It disrupts families, disrupts careers, destroys brains and bodies, tears apart friendships, and leads to untold human mysteries. When it comes to causes, most researchers agree that there is a combination of influences that makes people especially prone to the problems with alcohol. And the first or the top on the list is biological or hereditary influences. Some people inherit a high vulnerability to alcoholism. When compared to the children of non-alcoholics, the children of alcoholic parents are more likely to become alcoholic when they grow up. Of course, there is a lack of clarity on the exact role of biology and heredity in causing alcoholism. However, research has identified specific genes that appears to moderate the type and the cause of alcohol addiction. Another common influence is home and family influences. Alcohol problems are more prevalent in people who grew up in homes where one parent or both had problems with alcohol. family plays major roles in alcohol-related problem, maybe a causative role or a maintaining role. Children who grow up in homes where parents or both parents have problems with alcohol are often insecure, self-condemning, and afraid of intimacy. When they grow up or when they become adults, they continue to have problems with trust, dependency, problems with self-control, identification, and expression of feelings. They report higher feelings of anxiety, avoidance, and general fearfulness of forming attachments. Their ability to cope with difficult life situations is severely compromised. Coupled with high levels of anxiety, these children or these adults who grew up in homes where alcohol problems were prevalent tend to resort to alcohol use as a way of coping with the difficult life situations. While genetics and biological influences may help leading this fall, the family and the home influence is very, very important. Families also play a maintaining role in alcohol-related problems. When someone develops problems with alcohol, the family is greatly impacted. At first, the family may be in denial. They try hiding the problem or giving excuses for the member who is afflicted. But with the time, the family becomes more accepting of the problem that the member of their family or their loved one is suffering, and they may try to get some help while playing various roles to protect this member who is afflicted with alcohol-related problems. And this role would include the enabler's role, where one takes responsibility for meeting the family's needs, often stepping into the responsibilities of the member who is afflicted, who is struggling with alcohol-related problems. Then we have the family hero who tries to make everything in the family run as usual, taking responsibility for younger children and sometimes filling the gap of a confidant for the non-drinking parent. Then we have a scapegoat. The scapegoat in this instance is a person who acts out the family's stress. Then they get into trouble. And when they get into trouble, they distract the family, they distract attention from the person who has a drinking problem. These roles keep the family going, but maintains the drinking problem. We also have sociocultural influences as causes of alcohol-related disorders. If a culture has clear guidelines of use of alcohol, abuse is less likely. But when drunkenness is compromised, people are more likely to get into problem with alcohol. Alcohol problems are also common among people of low socioeconomic status or those living in geographical areas with widespread persistent poverty, hopelessness, or lack meaning for life. People drink in part to escape these realities, these pressures of their lives. Religious differences also play a role in causing alcohol-related problems. There are religions where drinking is accepted, while in other denominational groups, drinking is prohibited. We have psychological and stress-related influences that also play a causative role to alcohol-related disorders. Many people suffering alcohol-related disorders report that alcohol helps them to deal with their stresses, reduce tension, or meet psychological needs. Reduced anxiety, calming of aggressive or sexual drives, creating a sense of euphoria, escaping reality, or reducing inhibition and getting pure approval are some of the psychological and stress-related influences that cause alcohol-related disorders. Other psychological factors related include emotional immaturity, limited ability to tolerate tension or frustration, low capacity to endure pain or unpleasant feelings, and excessive dependency. And on the fifth, we have spiritual influences that also cause alcohol-related disorders. The route to alcoholism is smoother when an individual lacks spiritual or religious conviction and moral values. People who grow in homes where there is spiritual void, where there are no religious beliefs or clearly defined spiritual-based values, sense their lack of values and feelings of emptiness, and hence they try to fill this hollowness by turning to drugs and alcohol. Having said that, let us consider the effects of alcohol-related problems. Alcohol is a toxin that affects our body cells, causing damage to the liver cells, damage to the brain and the central nervous system, causing gastrointestinal diseases, increased risks of heart failure or stroke, impotence, and many other effects. Psychologically, alcohol dulls our thinking. It causes us to engage in inappropriate behavior and emotional responses. Self-neglect, withdrawal of the important obligations, loss of inhibition are just some of the psychological effects of alcohol-related problems. Within the family, alcohol-related problems causes tension, fear, insecurity, shame, embarrassment that may lead a family to isolate itself. Spiritually, it is very difficult to grow when one is dependent upon or is controlled by alcohol or any other drug. The great guilt, the shame that results into a feeling of alienation from God is a spiritual effect that is common with many who are using alcohol substances. So how do we prevent alcohol-related problems? First is to stimulate healthy homes. Prevention begins at home. Secondly, it is important to educate the society, to educate the young people about alcohol-related problems, the use, the process of addiction, and how they can avoid it. Emotional pleas for abstinence can really convince somebody who is under pressure to use. But when we give frank conversation and information about alcohol and other substances, the temptation to indulge may be weakened. Teach life skills that people may know how to deal with difficult situations instead of rather looking to cope with the use of alcohol and other substances. As we come to the end of our presentation today, it is important to note that substance-related disorders are often sneered at, and the people who are affected by substance-related disorders are often blamed or shamed by the family or members of the society. In fact, in some churches, when someone is found to be suffering substance use disorders or any substance-related disorders, they are excommunicated from the membership of that church without support. Most patients remain stuck in their situation, fighting it alone. Others give up and often deal with the constant depression and suicidal thoughts. Effort to get support and treatment for members of the family or the society suffering substance-related disorders are always thwarted, or most of the time, families do not see the need on investing financially to get treatment for people suffering substance-related disorders. Alcohol use disorders and some other substance-related disorders are serious mental illnesses, and we need to be deliberate about seeking treatment for members suffering substance-related disorders. When you are dealing with someone suffering substance-related disorders, avoid criticism. Avoid any form of abuse. Help them with stress management. Help them get professional and medical support. Encourage them to understand themselves and to change their lifestyle, and generally help the patients to cope with their relapses. Treatment is available for substance-related disorder as long as there's a deliberate effort to seek treatment to support members of our society. As we come to an end, I want to emphasize the fact that mental illness is just as serious as physical illness. And the same amount of effort that is put to seek interventions when one is physically ill should also be employed when one is mentally ill. People suffering substance-related disorders, such as addiction to alcohol or any other substances, are ill people in our society. And we should put the same amount of effort in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of family support to ensure that the right interventions is sought for them. This is it from us today. We thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Same time, same place.